Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, the capital of northern British Columbia. Beautiful day outside, a little bit early in the spring still, but it's still a beautiful day. Today, a special guest, Alex Mackenzie, and he has been a guest before. He's a friend. Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, John, man. I'm excited to be here.
So, Alex has an interesting background. He now is well-known, extremely popular, and we'll talk about that a lot. He is a comic. Would you call yourself a comic?
Oh, yeah, comic or comedian. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, comedian. And so you have a very interesting background, and in a way it kind of reminds me of, as you already know, I'm also a writer of books, and I'll show them a little bit later. I've a couple of books. The one is Against All Odds, and then the other one is this one here, Against All Odds. The other one is ADHD Unlocked, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, with our guest. And I wrote another one that is coming out this July. Yeah. It is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And I think the last time you were, I forget how long ago it was.
Yeah, it's probably about a year ago, or just short of a year, I guess.
Yeah, maybe? Something like that. And you were well on the way to, because you already had built a career. Yeah. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in the pulp mill.
That's
and
right.
You had a good career. You had we already.
Yeah, I was a power engineer and then an instrumentation mechanic. So I had 2 Red Seals at the mill.
So that too, and how old were you then?
Oh, when I finished, I got my power engineering, I was probably around 24 when I finished that. And then when I finished my instrumentation, I believe I was 28. Yeah. So I was 28 years old. Yeah.
Relatively young, but you already had the career well on the track, and you're secure. Your future was, for all intents and purposes, secure.
Oh, very, yeah.
At the same time, you already owned a house.
That's right, yeah.
Which is quite an accomplishment at that age already.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You had it done. Your career was set, and now all you had to do is go forward.
Yeah, it was like, that's the thing. That was the thing that scared me, was you felt like I could see every day of my life for the rest of my life already, right? Because you had it done. You had the house, you had your stable career, you had your job.
Perfect.
And it was like, just smooth sailing from here on out.
Right.
But then that was the thing that was terrifying.
Don't upset the apple cart. Keep doing the right things. And go another step up and up and
Yeah, but the thing was like, it was too, I don't know. You're always, I don't know. I guess always just having the foresight of being able to look into the future. Right. And then look back and be like, what would I wish I would have done 10 years ago? Okay. Like, even at that point, there were things, because I played competitive hockey growing up.
Okay.
And even at that point in my age, you're fairly young still, but an athletic pursuit dies very early, right? Like, if you're not making it by 20, it's pretty much over.
Especially in that career, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you were a good hockey player too.
Yeah, but I wish that I would have put more effort into that when I was younger. So I was already extrapolating that information into my life in my late 20s. Yeah. So I was already like, what do I wish I would have done 10 years ago? And I was like, man, I wish I would have really dug my heels in and tried harder at hockey, because this could have gave me such an exciting, fun life.
But you were happy, though, even with what you were doing, or weren't you?
At the mill? Oh, no, I was unhappy.
You were not happy.
I was happy chasing the thing. I think that's what I found, the pursuit of life, it's never about getting to the end. It's about the chase. It's like pursuing the thing.
So all of a sudden it became like, okay, everybody says I'm successful and all of that, but how come I'm not happy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like power engineering was the first one that was very fun, because it was, I didn't apply myself in school at all. I always thought I was dumb. I was like, I don't have much intelligence, I have ADHD as well, as you've put in your book there. So I never applied myself in school, and I didn't really pay attention and would get really low grades. And then when I did power engineering, I was like, hey, here's a test. Do you think you can learn this stuff? And so I applied myself in my early 20s, and it was it's very simple, just boom, boom, and it was fun. You're like, oh, I'm learning.
Because you were focused on it.
Yeah.
And you are bright and sharp, not untypical for people that have ADHD. We both know that, right? So it's a superpower, I call it, right?
Oh,
so,
I 100% agree with you, man. Like the way that like I can hyper focus in on the thing that I want to do and just block out everything else in the world. I find
and that especially applies as you go further. Let's go back to so you were a superintendent, or you now had the step one in the pulp mill and moving upward to where?
So I was in the pulp mill. I did my power engineering. I was working there.
Yeah.
And then what it was is I was working shift work still.
Right.
And I didn't want to work shift work. That was the thing. I was
shift work means
nights and days.
Nights and
days. So I
days.
would be doing like, a couple day shifts, like 12-hour shifts. So you work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then I would go like get a few days off. Then it would turn around and go to night shift. Then you do 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that was really draining on my body. And I used that as an excuse all the time. I was like, oh, if I didn't have to work shift work, I would eat a lot healthier.
Yeah.
Was the first thing. I was like, oh, I wouldn't be like out of shape because I would be eating healthier. I could have a regular routine for my bedtime.
Yeah.
And I just felt that would be the solution. And then my brain, the quickest solution was maintenance. So maintenance at the mill, they only work day shift.
Yeah.
So they work Monday to Thursday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
4/10s. So I was like, how do I get on that? And then they offered up apprenticeships. And I was fortunate I got a instrument mechanic apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So when I bid on that and then did like the aptitude testing and that and passed. And I actually wanted to be like an electrician, but I wasn't senior enough to get one. So the only one that was left was instrumentation.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I'll try that. And that was one that really developed my confidence, because as far as in our profession at the mill, instrument mechanics are always looked at as like the nerds. They're like, these guys are super smart, they're super geeky, you have to be very intelligent. And that's why no one wanted to do the trade. Was like the dropout rate was insane. It was like, something like 40%. Like I even know from when I started at BCIT in my first year to when we got to our fourth year of the trade, there were only like, we started out with the class of probably 28. There were only probably 8 people from our first year that were in our fourth year that made it all the way through. So it's a very high dropout rate of people. Because
it was so difficult to...
Yeah.
Did it involve a lot of thinking through how to determine what the problems were and how to fix them?
It's very like, basically it's like low voltage electronics. So it's process control. So basically any process variable. Yeah. So like if you want to know like the flow, the temperature, the pH of a product, we would install a transmitter that would measure that variable. And then we would like implement a control system to maintain a set point. So it'd be like, make sure this tank stays at this level. But it's just knowing all the inner workings of those instruments and that. And it can be very technical.
Extremely important, because pulp mills are big organizations and a lot of fiber passes through it.
Yeah.
All the time. You cannot say, oh shit, I forgot to do. And all of a sudden it spits out all this pulp.
Oh, totally.
And it has to be all redone or re-entered or,
Yeah, definitely. And like the bleaching process, you need a very certain amount of chlorine to get the proper bleaching, and same with the cooking and the digesters and all of that. So we did that, and that was something that really gave me confidence, because I didn't find that very challenging, like the schooling. Like I kind of breezed through it, and everyone said like, oh, these people are very smart. So that gave me, I was like, hey, maybe I'm not so dumb. Yeah. And then I started once I finished that, I started really thinking like, what are you capable of? Like if you really try and really put forth an effort, what can you actually do? Yeah, exactly. And that has now become like the pursuit or the goal of my life. Like I just... So that then, now you knew, you gained confidence, and I can relate to it, because I was not very good academically. I failed grade 3, and then who failed grade 3, right? And then grade 7 3 times. You couldn't get the alphabet down or what?
I have no idea. They said, oh, okay, well, he doesn't make it, so okay, well.
This guy just doesn't get finger painting,
Yeah. And then... So then they said, well, what are we going to do with the guy? Send him to the mentally challenged school, or send him the other direction? And, so I kind of felt like I was a failure, but I still, underneath me, I still believe I can do it as well. So I had the dream of going to Canada, and then I had to prove to myself that I can do it if I start with nothing here and build my own lumber mill and obviously that's what I want. Anyway, coming back to you, very similar in terms of not untypical for ADHD. They seem to have, the extraordinary gifts, I call it, the superpower of being able to do a whole lot of things all at the same time. Or if they focus on something, they can be very, very good at what they make the decision that is the dream, or that's what they want to do. That's what they're going to focus on. They're going to be very good at it. I'm very good at numbers.
Right.
I always was.
Yeah,
and I'm a good writer.
Yeah.
Amazingly, considering. So bringing me back then to, so similar for ADHD, and that's why it's so important for us to talk about that as well, because it's so much part of your life, so much part of my life. So then now you're at the pulp mill, and now you have reached that level, and you still don't feel the challenge is there. I'm not happy. There is still something else I want to do. And then I remember from when we talked before, then at some point you made a fairly major decision that included selling your house and getting a camper and heading in a whole different direction.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the next
Tell me
move.
about it.
I was basically just like constantly asking yourself, like, what do you want? Like, what really makes you happy? I started really paying attention to my energy levels.
Right.
And I'm like, that was like the first indicator, was like, what energized you and what made you tired? And
So you mean that all of a sudden you had the energy if you were doing if there was a challenge?
if you were talking about comedy.
Right.
That was the thing. So it was stand-up comedy. So I started kind of just dabbling in that through a podcast. Kind of got me into that.
Then already?
I started that when I was 26. So I was at the
Did
mill.
you have any ideas before that maybe that was something?
I always loved stand-up. I
Yeah.
really did. Like since the time I was 12, I remember an assignment in grade 8 in first year of high school. They said, "What is funny?" And I wrote on a stage in Montreal.
Yeah.
And that's Just for Laughs, the Just for Laughs festival. I used to come home from school. I would watch stand-up comedy on the TV every day and absolutely loved it. And I would recite jokes to my grandma and stuff. And my grandma would always say to me, "Alex, you're really fun. You should do this."
Yeah.
And I'd always say, "Grandma, like, I can't do that. Like, it's easy to like say other people's jokes, but like to write your own would be so hard." And I always liked it, but I thought, again, like not having the confidence, I thought that this was reserved for these people who were special,
Right.
who were these like superstars and that were, larger than life figures
Right.
that got on there. And then as I gained more and more confidence, then I started getting on stage.
So now take me through then with when you made the decision to leave the job at the pulp mill.
Yeah.
That the way you had it made, you had your house, you were set for lives, and now all of a sudden you said, "No, I got to do something different."
Yeah. So what it was I remember, what was it? I started going on the road prior to quitting my job. Because originally what I wanted to do, I was going to quit my job. I was going to buy a van. And then I was just going to drive to Central America with my dog.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to go live on a beach and live the carefree life. And I'll like rent surfboards to people or something.
You were going to sell your house, you cash in the money, you had the dollars then. Yeah.
And I thought I would just do a vlog. I'll do a video blog on YouTube and I'll do that. And eventually it'll catch on and I'll find a way to monetize it and make money. And I'll just do like a travel thing. And that was the plan.
And then something went wrong.
So my house
pipe
Yeah,
broke.
exactly.
I still remember
Yeah,
that.
dude, that's crazy. I'm like, Johnny, the memory on this guy, dude.
yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my pipe burst in my house. I had my house for sale. I had the realtor coming on Monday. We're gonna sell it.
Yeah.
Sunday, I'm like, okay, I better go
flooded.
walk through the house, and it's flooded in the basement.
Yeah.
And so now I remember that was where I felt very defeated. I
Yeah.
burst into tears. I was like, I'm never getting out of this job. I'm never selling
Yeah.
this house.
Yeah.
And then, luckily my mom was there and everyone, and they talked me down, and it was good. And then you like start turning that into a positive, right? You're like,
Right.
okay, the insurance is going to cover this. You're going to get a brand new basement.
Yeah.
It's going to increase the value of your house, and you'll sell it. You'll get more, and then you'll be set better off, So then that happened. But during that winter, because I had to stay here for the repairs,
And that was when?
that was 2018. That would have been like
2018.
September of 2018 when the flood happened.
Yeah, and then you had to wait for the winter before you could then...
Yeah,
Were you still working at the pulp
I
mill?
was.
Yeah.
So I quit the mill April, so I put in my resignation April 1st of 2019. But my last working day, I believe, was May 25th.
Okay.
Just the way that like May 1st, we get our new vacation.
Yeah.
So I put in all my vacation, and I think my last real day was the 25th. Yeah. So then, what happened though is that winter while I was waiting, I started doing more comedy. Because I got cut from my hockey
You still owned your
team.
house?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
I still owned my house. I was repairing it, getting ready, and I just thought, we'll get this all ready, and I'll sell it in the springtime, and I'll quit then. But in the meantime, I got cut from my hockey team. So I used to play for the Quesnel Kangaroos.
Yeah.
It's like a senior men's team.
Yeah.
I got cut from them. So now I'm stuck here in the winter, and I'm not playing hockey.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I should do more of this comedy thing. So then I reached out to some headline acts, Simon King, and he started bringing me on the road with him. And then I started to see the business side of it. So I saw that like, hey man, if we can
That was the key, right? So finding
that was the biggest
guy
Yeah.
that was willing
Oh, yeah.
to take you under his wing.
Yeah, I think anything in life, you need to find a mentor. You have to kind of find someone who's done the thing you want to do to show you how they got there.
Yeah.
And then you can like use that information to get there. And then it's like from there, you just seem to grow and grow and, you know, try find.
And amazingly, it works the same in business. A lot of people that are successful or perceived to be successful are quite willing to help others that are thinking about going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And I always suggest to individuals that are thinking about pursuing it, try to find somebody, talk to them, at least that will help you avoid some of the pitfalls maybe. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It is funny about that with learning though, right? Like you can tell someone over and over, but until they actually go through it, it seems so hard to like really get that information to stick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that, but yeah, it was basically finding Simon, getting on the road. But once I could see that there was like a money aspect to it, then you're like, oh, like I can use, there's a business to this comedy thing. And you're like, this can provide a way of living. And it seemed like a very simple, because like I loved hockey, but I didn't really know how to monetize hockey. I feel like I could now. I feel like I've been doing like a lot of business stuff lately, and I do feel now that I have an idea, like an entrepreneurial mindset that I'm like, I think
that's what it takes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, I think I could make anything I decide to do successful. Successful in the sense of find a way to make it have monetary value.
Exactly.
But yeah, and so it just became that. Like I remember it simple was like, if I can get 50 people to pay $20 to come to a comedy show, I'm like, that's $1,000.
Correct.
So I'm like, now how do you sell a comedy show?
Yeah.
And then it became learning how to do all the marketing.
Yeah.
And then it became about the product as well. Then you're like, well, you know, at the beginning of my career, I had to hire headline acts in order to do the show because I wasn't a headline act. I couldn't do an hour of stand-up comedy.
No.
If I did, people would be like, I want my damn money back, you know, and they'd never be coming again. Yeah. So I had to hire headline acts to do that. And then it was constantly learning. It was sitting in the back of the room. I'd get to open for them, do 10 to 20 minutes, and I'd sit at the back of the room and I'd watch. And I'd be like, what are they doing? How are they doing this? Little moves, you know, like if there's a chatty table over here that's not listening, they have a little quip that they would do to get them engaged. And then back over here, and you just really start watching these guys work the room. And then you started like picking up on it. And then it was like learning right every day. You need more jokes, practice, until it developed to the point now I'm a headline act. And then now you can carry your own hour. And last year was my first year of me touring as a full headliner in like pubs and bars. So I was doing a lot of pubs and bar shows all over Western Canada last year. And that really built my confidence. That was like, you know, I realized I'm like, I can do this as good as any of these guys. And I think I can hang with all these people. And so then that started to grow. And now it's just snowballed. Like now this year I'm doing my first full theater tour. So I've got over 30 dates booked right now, all in theaters all across Western Canada. And
now it is April the 19th.
That's right,
You are booked until November.
That's right. The last show, November 18th.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And right throughout Canada, or mainly in Western Canada?
All Western Canada. I don't have anything on the East Coast yet. I do generally go to like Fredericton, Halifax, like Charlottetown, that area. I will be going out there, but I think I'm going to save that for early January next year.
Now let's just quickly talk about, because we are in Prince George, and you are. It is the 19th here, Wednesday the 19th, I believe. Saturday evening, you're doing 2 shows. One at starting at 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7.
And then one at second show starting at 9:30. The number 1 show is already sold out. There are still some tickets available for the second show.
The late show, we can still get some tickets left. They're at alextellsjokes.com. That's where they're available to be purchased. But it's for this is a very big show. I'm trying not to get too worked up about it, but it's the biggest show of my career to date. So this is my first live special taping.
Okay.
So basically what it is it's all of my best jokes from since I started stand-up 8 years ago and put into a 60-minute show. And then I perform that. We're filming it all, and then we're trying to get it platformed on one of the major streaming services. So like Netflix or Amazon or Crave. And then, as far as I'm
You're
concerned,
on YouTube too, right?
A lot. So that is another option with it. I'm almost leaning towards that. Like a lot of comedians are
pretty powerful, right?
Dude, they're self-releasing on YouTube and they're not going to the streaming platforms. And there's a couple reasons why. Like one, YouTube is accessible to everyone, right? So it's just easier for anyone to get it. You don't have to be a subscriber.
Right.
And then the other thing is, when these platforms buy the rights to your thing, you kind of lose you don't own it anymore.
Right.
They own your product.
Right.
So you can't clip it out. So like a big thing you do with a stand-up special is you make like those little clips like Reels or TikToks. And then you post on there and use those to create more content, to create more awareness, to hopefully grow your brand, to be able to tour more, sell more tickets, and continue growing your name and your business and your art. And if you sell it to a platform, I know like I had a friend who was going to sell his to Paramount Plus, and they offered him, he was only allowed to take 3 minutes of his special.
Okay.
So he could pick 3 minutes of it, and that's what he was allowed to post online.
Okay.
And that's just like, you're like, that's not enough. Like my goal is I want to be able to post it all in these little clips, all my jokes, and then that gives me like almost a year of content to like post on my social media, to grow my following, to then promote more shows.
So marketing is very, very critical. And then you have to have a good product, right? Because otherwise it doesn't work. I see that in just coming back to my books. Is that I always wanted to write a book, not hoorah, hoorah, John, how successful he has been, but more all the challenges around it.
Well, I read, like, this book's amazing, Against All Odds, dude. It's so good. Like, you just learn, and it's like, you see just like, you're like, oh, everything's going great, pitfall. And then you're like, oh, pull yourself out of there, pitfall. Pull yourself out of there. And you're like, dude, like, just like the amount of, and I see it. It's a trait in successful people. It seems to be that ability to just keep coming back. Stay exactly. Stay focused.
You must fall down. And get back up again. And then it gets harder to stand back up, because that will kind of get you the experience that you require, gives you the confidence that I know I'm going in the right direction. I will not stop. And that was important to me. But the other thing that I was going to point out directly to marketing. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And then when I wrote it, it's quite an act to it to do it right, because the first one had to be right, because I cannot say, oh shit, I have to do it again. Let me do another one. You got one crack at it. The other thing that I did is my name, relatively small on top of it, and then looking forward, I wanted to write more books. I want to write 1 book a year.
That's a big task.
And then, and so I did this one because I'm ADHD, you're ADHD, and there was a stigma around it. I thought I was a failure, all the same reasons you had. And then I knew then I had to create this challenge to prove to myself that I could do it, as you did. And then, I felt then I had an obligation to talk about it more and more. And then in particular, in 2019, when I got the honorary doctorates of laws from the University of Northern British Columbia, a real honor. But somebody with grade 7 give me a break here.
Yeah, that's really good, man.
But it was a good one. So the other thing that I did, I knew already that this book will be popular.
Right.
And so I then had to get my name out there. I put it on there bigger.
Yeah.
Because I want people to relate to that name.
Yeah.
And to the books, because I'm going to do more of them. And so now where we are is that I'm writing another book, as you know.
Yeah.
And so it is finding your passion. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about, you and me.
Yeah.
Right. The pulp mill, the house, the frustration, and then feeling, oh my God, I want to get there. But you found your passion, and now you have to get there, and that's where you want to be.
Well, it's funny too, though, because you find the passion, but then it's still like, dude, the amount of pitfalls and fallbacks. Like, it was less than a year after I quit my job that COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then I remember I used to say, you know what I love about comedy? I'm like, no one can take this away from me.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my thing. And I'm like, you could never tell me I can't do comedy.
Exactly.
And then COVID comes, and they're like, hey, you know that thing you like to do? Illegal.
Yeah.
You can't do this anywhere now.
Yeah. Can you imagine how much of a challenge that is?
Oh.
You go through all of those while you're still trying to prove this to yourself. And then the objective is obviously, finding your passion, living the dream, I don't use it very often, but people say to me, how are you doing, John? And I think sometimes to myself, I'm living the dream. How much better can it get?
Yeah.
And are you living the dream?
Oh yeah, dude, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I look around now, man, and like for the first time in my life, I say to people, like, I'm proud of who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I am very proud. I look at myself and I go, dude, like, you're the best Alex Mackenzie you've ever been.
Right.
Like mentally, health-wise, like you're spiritually, all of it. And I'm like, I can look in the mirror finally and be like, I am proud of this person.
Here I am.
And I still, like, obviously there's still lots of things you're always working for, trying to improve, and I don't think that ever ends.
No.
But for the first time in my life, I'm like, you're doing the thing that you should be doing.
Isn't that an amazing feeling?
You want to know something, actually, John? I've never told you. So Against All Odds, that actually is like, that book is what helped me really push through to get the Hungry for Laughs comedy tour off the ground.
Right.
Because so the Hungry for Laughs tour, that was like that big, it's a big like variety act where we have 3 comedians. We had a freestyle rapper. This year we actually have a magician coming in, and then we have a foot archer, Arissa Kelly. And this book, Your Pursuit, because when I started that thing, I did one show, and I got the one show and it went okay. It was good. I just barely broke even, raised a little bit of money for charity, and it was kind of a proof of concept.
Right.
Where I'm like, okay, this can work, that we did back in March.
Right.
And actually you guys sponsored that event for us. And
Exactly.
that was like, helped me get it off the ground.
Yeah.
Then we had that. Then we came back and I'm like, hey, we want to do a tour now of this thing.
Yeah.
And so I booked a bunch of theaters and I used all my money just to like get the deposits down.
Yeah.
Just to get the thing started.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, hey, we have it all. And I'm like, I don't have the money to produce this tour.
Right.
And then I remember, I'm like, I need to get money. And I'm like, how do you find money as a young entrepreneur?
Exactly.
So I started going around and I went to all the banks, and I remembered in your book, you're like, go to the bank and with a business plan.
Yeah.
So I went there and they're like, oh, like, what's your thing? And they're like, well, you're not even incorporated. Like, we can't give you any money.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, how do I get incorporated? They're like, well, go see a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, go see a lawyer. You pay them, got incorporated, went back to the bank. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm incorporated now. Can I have money?
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, we need like 3 years of year end. We're
Yeah.
not giving you any money.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what else? So I went to every bank and all the banks. I was just thinking of John the whole time in your book, where you're going in and being like, give me the 25 grand so I can start my sawmill.
Exactly.
And then I immediately went to all of them. All of them were like, no, 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 no. And I just kept going. I was like, well, what do you do? Like, how did you get this going?
Yeah.
And then someone let me know about Community Futures,
Yeah.
which is like a thing for like a nonprofit that's government ran
Exactly,
for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I went there and I saw them, and they're like, okay, we'll show you how to write a business plan. We'll
Yeah.
put all this together.
Yeah.
You have to put like a 3-year plan, 5-year sales projections, all of it.
Exactly.
We put it all together. they gave me a micro loan. So they gave me $25,000. And I was like, just like Johnny.
You're off the road.
I'm on the way.
Yeah.
And then, just like you, within a month, I was all gone. All that money was gone immediately, just marketing those shows.
Same as me.
Exactly. And I would honestly kept thinking back of this book, and I go, dude, you're doing it right. Like, just follow the course. You know, this is what all the successful people do. Yeah. And I would always draw from that book. Yeah. And then what I did is I did the marketing, and I spent all that money on the marketing. But now I had $60,000 in ticket sales, which I wouldn't get till the shows were done. But I was out of money, and I had no money now to actually do the tour, to be like, hey, I need to fly the acts in, I need to get the hotels, I need to do all of this. Yeah. So I went back to Community Futures. Yeah. And then I showed them like, hey, I'm out of money, I'm sorry, but here is sales reports for those shows I'm doing. Can I get more money? So we had to redo the business plan, redo it all. Then they gave me another $30,000. Wow. And then that was what I used to then produce the show and then get it off the ground.
Amazing.
And then it's just like, coming back and doing it again. And then,
persistent, staying the course, believing. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And so that's the approach that you took to it.
Yeah. And now it's just scaling up. Like this year, it looks like we're going to rent our first arena. Yeah. So that's the plan. We haven't announced it yet, but I'm never keep anything secret. I'm too excited. See, this is how I knew I meant to do comedy. See how I'm talking right now?
Yeah, yeah.
I get so excited about it.
I love it,
dude.
Yeah.
So it was like, I think November 18th, we have a hold on the CN Center, which is like the arena here. So we're going to look at renting the arena.
That's
and scaling
how many
up.
seats?
So it can do up to 5,000.
5,000.
But our goal is 3. Yeah. We're like, if we can do 3,000, and then
you'd be contented, happy with it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'll be happy with it. Just doing it, because it's kicking down those barriers. Like that's like what I did. Like this year, I'm now doing all theaters with myself, and it was realizing you're like, I think in the world we get to decide who we want to be, and it's just like putting that energy and that work and that ethic in, and. So I just decided, I'm doing theaters this year. And then I already know in my head, I'm like, I'm going to want to figure out arenas. Yeah. So you're like, well, let's do it with the Hunger for Laughs. Let's scale it up. Yeah. Try an arena.
So how does that look like from a business perspective, Alec? You're going to need all kinds of staff around you. If you're going to have other artists as well coming in as to do the initial one to get it ready for the main show is you.
For the arena show, you mean?
Yeah, something like that, or any other show.
Well, for Hunger for Laughs, like generally, like the business model is always like you're just renting the venue and then you're just hoping to sell more tickets, right? Right. So it's basically like for the PG Playhouse, you just rent the venue, and then it just becomes like the thing that's crazy now is that you can run almost the whole business by yourself with a laptop. Right. Before you needed so many people, but now in the digital world, like for a lot of my shows, it's me and my mom. Like my mom now, she's retired, and my mom, she helps me. She does all like the booking for all the hotels, all the admin, the flights.
Huge help to you.
Oh, it's huge. And my mom actually, she's coming on tour with me now this summer.
I love it.
So she's retired. My goal, I want to make enough money that I can buy a second RV for my mom and dad, and then they can be in that, and then they can follow me around while I do these shows. Because I do think it's funny with family, because family, I always say, there's no one that can get under your skin quicker than your family. Yeah. But then I do know...
They're always there.
Right. But there's no one you love more. Exactly. And I do picture, I know I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to get everything I ever dreamed of. I'm like, you're going to get all the success. I'm going to get to travel and tour the world and perform in sold out theaters. You're going to have all the things, like money's not going to be an issue at one point in your life. And there's going to be nothing you want more than to have your mom at a show. Yeah. I'll be like, oh man, I wish my mom was here right now. Yeah. So it's having that foresight to think that sometimes your mom could get under your skin, but right now you're like...
She was there when the house flooded and your whole dream of taking your dog in your camper and going down to South America, all that fell apart at one of the most critical parts, and she was there, obviously. Yeah.
I've had a very supportive family the whole time. I mean, at the beginning, they were pretty okay, you can try it for a bit. They're really trying to get me to do... like a leave of absence.
Yeah.
They're like, don't quit. Take your 6-month leave of absence. Go and try it, and then you can come back. And I said no, because I knew if I took that leave of absence, I would come back. Because the second things got hard, it was like having a safety net. And I knew, I was like, if I don't leave myself a safety net, there's no option. I have to figure this out.
That's what I figured too. When I left Holland with my $150 and came off the bus here
with your
$25.47, I had attitude, passion, work ethic, what follows this success. There was no question in my mind, although I couldn't speak the language, I didn't know salt, and I didn't have a job, that I would be successful. I would build this mill. There was no question about it. It was not if, but when. You know?
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel with my comedy career and everything. It's just a matter of time before there. And then it's also like looking back and trying to, I don't know, like already, like I just came back from a 3-month tour of Australia.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're already at the dream, man. Like, it's being aware that you're already at the place that you wanted to be, but not stopping and being able to continue to move forward.
You got very good press on your tour in Australia, right? Mm-hmm. You know, since the Stays Whisper in Australia, they wrote about you. And
so I had that, and there was a magazine, Express Mag, and I actually got featured. You know, it was a really cool thing for me. So you've met Arissa, the foot archer. Yeah. So I met Arissa back in 2020 when I first went to Australia. Yeah. And I remember it was at the Perth Fringe, and they have a thing called the Digitower. Yeah. It's just a giant digital tower. It's like their Times Square for this for Perth, the city. And I remember Arissa was on that Digitower, and I was like just in awe. And I was like, man, imagine being on that thing. Like, what a star. And I went back this year, and I actually, the production that brought me over actually put me up on the Digitower. Wow. So then I got to see my face on that thing. And you're just like, dude, like you're doing it. Like all the things that you've ever wanted, you're doing. Yeah. And it's pretty exciting. It just more becomes like just making sure that this is what you want, you know? You're like, what do you really want?
And that's the whole purpose of the book that I wrote, that is now coming out in July, and you wrote a piece for it, actually.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the book, man.
And it is finding your passion, living the dream, you know, and even also for myself, you know, the things that happen is that same as our podcasting, you know, I started doing interviews about the forest industry, and I have a passion about the forest industry in British Columbia. So I did that with Shaw, and we did these small programs, about 35 of them at Shaw, at their
and this was prior to the podcast?
Prior to COVID and the podcast, yeah. And so we did them at Queensway, and you know, but then COVID came. Right. And so we did about 35 of them, and they were very, very popular. And then we said, well, let's do that podcast thing, you know, and so we started the podcast thing, and then, you know, it all takes time to get going, and then I started becoming more comfortable about it. Initially, I would sit on a table more or less and have somebody else on the table, and I would have a fair amount of notes with me. Right. But the interesting part, and you may find that yourself, because I kind of visualize you, that I have an amazing memory. Mm-hmm. I always did, and I never thought anything of it, but people saying, I don't understand, how can you possibly remember that?
I can't believe you remember the pipe bursting, dude. I was blown away even there. I was like, that's crazy.
But I've always had that, and I was very, very good at numbers. So then we said, okay, well, where should we podcast? And then saying, well, I had this apartment, and then talking to Scott and some of my staff is saying, okay, well, where is the table set? He said, well, we'll put 2 couches in it. We'll sit it comfortable, like we have it now. And that was a great idea, because all of a sudden now we're creating this relaxing setting. And it's not me podcasting, it's us having a conversation.
Yeah, right? That's ideally what you want, right? You're just trying to have like a genuine conversation and to create that comfort.
Exactly. And so you are 115. And then, and initially it started out slowly. Actually, Kendall Kershaw, my trainer, was my first one that I podcasted. And she is an amazing young lady. She was is my trainer. I'm apparently the oldest bodybuilder or competitive bodybuilder in North America.
Yeah,
and I trained with her. Dude. Yeah, and then we went together to the provincials. She was also competing in her category, and she was the youngest. I was the oldest, and then we qualified for the nationals and the Arnolds in 2018.
Yeah. What about the Arnolds? Are you doing that this year?
Yeah, it will be next year.
Next year.
So I'm training again now, and then again competing in November, and then getting ready for the Arnold's. I be 83 then. Yeah. And so and I'm gonna win.
Yeah.
No question.
Get in there, Johnny. I love it.
So the point that I was gonna make is that so then gradually starting to build the podcasting, because podcasting relatively new, really. 4 or 5 years, and so we started gradually becoming more, and what should it look like. So we have an amazing amount of people here that are stars in some form or another and are not well known. We podcasted a lot of them, but then we also intermixed it with business in our podcasting, and that's what we're doing right now. Amazingly, we have January, February, March this year, an average of 5 million views a month.
Yeah, dude, that's phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Which makes us virtually the largest podcaster, if not in Canada, but certainly in Western Canada.
Yeah.
And internationally.
Yeah.
Adding to that virtual that we can do.
Yeah, I saw you got this set up here to start doing, getting guests in
more
all over the world.
International.
Yeah. Well, it's good. Do you feel that you're taking your business mindset into your podcasting? Where you're like, how do I grow this? How do I constantly
absolutely
make it better?
No question about that.
Yeah.
And same with my books, like this one here, that there is no question in my mind that is the same with the books. If you want to do it well, then it takes time to learn or acquire the skill set.
Of course.
I was lucky enough to have people around me that helped us in the process. The second one, this one, very popular.
Yeah.
And then the next one we are doing is, the finding your passion.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I could relate to all of the books. They're very good. Like the topics of them all.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's perfect, man. There's like the entrepreneur, the ADD.
Yeah.
And then the passion thing.
And then I do another one. That this one, the one that you wrote part of it to us, is that coming out in July. And then we already started with another one. Is living young, dying old.
Right.
And it's basically is about, that how you affect your lifestyle and keeping your physical body and your mind healthy.
Right.
And good diets and all the other things and the way you live and to, become as old as you can possibly become. That's everybody's objective, but to stay healthy and fit doing it.
Have you read Lifespan by David Sinclair?
No, I have not.
That's a book. I'm going to get that for you.
Okay.
I'm going to come give it to you. I'll give it to Scotty or to you somehow, and we'll get it to you.
Okay.
But that is one of the best books I've ever read in my life and it's about longevity. So it's David Sinclair. He is a lead researcher in aging.
Okay.
And he runs a lab in Harvard and then one back in, I think, Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
And it's like they've figured out aging. Like it's phenomenal, dude. Like the beginning of the book, he starts off explaining to you like a single-celled organism.
Right.
And then like basically how it's either like replicating or repairing.
Right.
And then he goes through all of it and then he shows all of his lab studies on things they've found. And then the last part of the book is more like moral questions about like, should we solve aging? Like what if people did live forever, that type of stuff.
Right.
But the first two I was very interested in.
Right.
But it's phenomenal. Like their whole goal is to get your health span is close to your lifespan.
Yeah.
Because what he's saying is like, now our lifespans are great. Like we're living very long,
right,
but we're unhealthy for the last 20 years of it, and you're not living a very good life.
No.
So their goal is to get it like your health span as close to your lifespan as possible.
Exactly.
And yeah, since I started doing, like I read that book, and I always find information seems to be the big thing. Like when you have information, that's what, it's hard to make the wrong decision when you have the right information.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So then it's like, once you learn about aging and all these things that it's doing, like bad habits are doing to your body, it's hard to then continue doing the things when you know how destructive they are for your health.
Yeah.
So then it makes it easy to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And
good information is hard to come by because there's so much information out there.
Oh, that's a crazy thing
that you don't know where, and so that's kind of what I want to do in that book, Living Young, Dying Old, and then the other part about it that I believe what will happen is that I'm not saying that I'm so special, other than that this one is good in terms of, for all the reasons that you said, not hoorah, John, how successful he is.
Arissa liked that book too. Arissa read it.
But more about, that all the adversity that goes with it and how to get through it and do it. And then this one is good. And I believe that these books have been already quite successful, but will sell more than 1 million copies of each of those books. There's no question in my mind about that. But it's again a process, and is that you have to do it well. And I'm not saying hoorah, John, how successful a writer he is, but it's more the point that I'm making is staying the course, doing the right thing, and then in combination with podcasting about a number of things in the world, then the attention goes. Social media immensely powerful.
Oh yeah.
Then the attention goes to the book.
Yeah.
And then saying that ADHD, for instance, there's virtually not a day that goes by that people don't come to me and say, I have it, or it's around me. And, and ADHD is such interesting because there used to be so much stigma around it, where now more and more the frequency of occurrence very high compared to what they thought it would be.
Right.
And the other part of that book is that it is written in such a way that you can go open the book anywhere where you want to and then already started reading, because that's how I put it together. And
built
then,
for people with ADHD.
Exactly.
Like, I can give you 3 minutes of my time
exactly.
before I lose my thought.
But the other reason is also somebody is for slow learners,
right,
or people that have been affected by trauma. That it's an ideal book for. So that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Coming back to your career and so how do you go about being funny and going on stage, and all of a sudden all these people are looking at me and say, okay, what are we going to do?
Right. So how do you go from, well, one of the biggest hurdles that I go through now is the difference between a producer and a performer. Right. So I self-produce all my shows.
Right.
So that's the thing where it's chaotic. Like this weekend for the Playhouse, we have a film crew coming in. We're at our meeting. We hired all local people. We've got local directors, local film crew, local editors, photographer coming in, and that's our man Jeff over here actually. He's coming in doing some stuff, and it's organized chaos. I have to supply my own door staff, so all the ticket sales, I have to get that. We have a merch booth running, and at the moments leading up to the show, you're orchestrating all of this. Cameras, are you ready? Are you in shape? Are you this? And then you have to remember, you're oh, you're the show. You have to get ready to be funny now. And you're that's a completely different part of the brain, because it's that's where I think the ADD does very good for the organizing and everything as well. Where I can go Kate, check this box, check this, and I can get all those in a row. And then it's okay, now those are ready, let the creative side out. And you know what I do? I always do, because it's like you were talking about with the podcast, where you want to make it comfortable in a conversation, rather than this really official thing. And that's like stand-up. You want it to seem like a one-way conversation. You don't want, I want to be talking to you, like not at you.
Yeah.
So it's like if I'm up there like a robot just saying my jokes and I'm like talking down to you, there's no connection.
Right.
So you have to be present in that moment and like really connect with that crowd and make it seem like we're just going on this like one-way conversation where I'm like the conductor rather than like someone just kind of saying stuff at you. Yeah. So a few things I always do when it's backstage right before the show, I always I write down some things. I write on my set list. So I have a book I write. After I write all the jokes that I want to do, I write "My mom loves me" and I draw a little heart around it. And I always started doing that because I was like, you know what? Even if this goes terrible, your mom loves you. So don't worry about how the show if it goes bad. Under that, I always write, remember to have fun, and I draw a smiley face. Yeah. Because sometimes you can get yourself so anxious that you're like so worried about this show being so good and perfect, especially with something like this weekend, where this is being filmed and we're going to release it. And it's really my first piece of my art out to the world that I've worked on for years to develop this hour. And you're now putting it out there and you want it to be so perfect, right? I'm like, oh, I want to hit every punchline, make sure everything's great. Yeah. And then I'm like, remember to have fun.
Doesn't have to
yeah, exactly. Like if you
just
fumble,
be
if you drop,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, just remember to have fun. So that's one. The next one I go down to, and it's probably more of like the entrepreneur mindset comes in, is I say, don't be afraid to fail. Yeah. I always write that down. And that's always because a lot of the time when I go on stage, I'll have an idea in my head where like a new joke, and it's just like taking a risk in anything where I go like, I know I could tell this joke the way I've told it 100 times before that I know works, but I have a bit of an idea that I think if I switch these words or I say this ending different, I think that might work better. And it's like, I always pictured it like, I noticed it like coming up to a jump on a snowmobile, where you have to make that decision. You're like, are you going to go and drop off this cornice or you're not? And then it's like that moment of actually just doing it is like it's such a release. It feels so good taking that risk. Yeah. And so I write that on there. Don't be afraid to fail. Because I'm like, if this thing flops, who cares? Like that's how you learn and get better and grow. And then the last one I write, I put in little brackets, I put, I love the audience. Yeah. And I say that out loud. Yeah. 10 times in my head, or I'll say it out loud or in my head 10 times. And I'll go, I love the audience. I love the audience. And then when I greet them, I try and greet them the same way I greet my dog when I come home. I'm just like, hello, how are you guys doing? And I'm so excited. And when you realize I love the audience, you go, these are all my friends. And like, I'm here to give them a show and we're here to hang out and have a fun time. Exactly. And it's not like me versus them. It's not like I got to win them over and make them laugh. No. You're like, no, we're all here to laugh. We all want to have a time.
And those are the critical elements, right? Mm-hmm. So I can relate to that. And I just want to share this with you because that's why, you're a good friend. And then I admire what you're doing and you've been very successful. And there are a lot of similarities between us other than ADHD. Yeah. Is that I didn't feel good about myself. I thought I was a failure. And I had, up to the time that I was virtually 50, and already I had been successful and having a lumber mill and all the other kinds of people say, oh, you might get so successful in this. I didn't feel that about myself. And to interact and communicate with more than 2 or 3 people to me was virtually impossible.
Right. And you mean at one time or just in your life in general?
Up to that point.
Right. So you would have like 1 or 2 close friends, but you could never have more.
No. But if there were more than 2 or 3 people in my own setting, it was difficult for me to communicate.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Then my ex-sister-in-law dragged me down to Toastmasters, and I said, maybe I've told you this already. And anyway, so I wasn't going to go there because then you're going to say, okay, John, talk about you, and I didn't want to do that. Yeah. Somehow I stayed. I went to another one, and I was at Toastmasters for 10 years, and then reached the highest level in Toastmaster, which is a distinguished Toastmaster. Yeah. So that taught me a lot of things. It taught me to feel more confidence because it was the best investment I ever made at $2 or $3 a week. Right. So and I can, for anybody that wants to be more active in the public or even become a better communicator, I always, suggest Toastmasters. But it does, it allows you to communicate, to think on your feet, like Alex, and then at the same time, become a good listener.
Right.
Because the first thing with Toastmasters is become a good listener.
Right.
The second one, become a good speaker and think structurally in your mind. There before, sometimes what happens to people that have ADHD, one of the good friends of mine, Dr. Tracy Lotz, who wrote the foreword to my ADHD, a medical doctor and an emergency surgeon, ADHD. But she says is that ADHD was all these squirrels running around all at the same time, thinking they're not do this, and all the other kind of stuff. But she extremely successful and was able to manage that, get them in line. And so what it did for me, then gradually I became a more effective speaker, listener, and and then started competing in it and became probably one of the most active speakers and public speakers in British Columbia.
Yeah, for sure.
And still, it's very much part of what I do. I'm a professional speaker and do keynotes and all kinds of other presentations that I do, and we'll do more of it. Not unsimilar to you, where all of a sudden I find myself in a setting. Happened a couple of times actually in the last 2 months, but I'm not familiar with the setting really. I never know. I say a lot of times in presentation, what happens is that something goes wrong with the technology.
Right, the AV.
At least 50% of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm very fanatic about what that will look like. I like to know what my public is, and I like to have a general idea of what area do they want me to speak in, but it doesn't always happen that way. So give you an example of that. Every year on November the week of November the 11th, for me it's very important. We were liberated by the Canadians April the 12th, 1945.
Right.
And I always feel I have to share with young people in particular why the 2 minutes of silence. Why that is so important. And I've done that already for more than 10 years. I do usually 4 schools. I did, last year I did a couple of schools in Surrey. And then Rush to Prince George did another school here, 2,000 people at Duchess Park, I think. And then we had to rush to the other school and on the west, Highway 16 going west. I forget how the name was.
Like College Heights or something?
Yeah, a little bit further than that.
Okay,
anyway, so I came in there and then all of a sudden, they were already waiting for me because the timing was so tight, and then I was barely in there, and then they said, okay, we are ready for you. And then, and it was a bit of a mixed crowd, obviously. But I have the point that I'm making, I have, as you do now, I have the confidence that the words will come to me. And I'm a passionate speaker. And I bring the crowd in. And then the other thing, extremely powerful in being, and I know I'm a very good speaker. And a public speaker, and and I bring the crowd in, and usually what I do when I start my speech, I kind of look at the crowd where everybody will say, I know he was looking at me.
Making
and
that
the most
connection.
effective way of speaking is pausing. Giving time to think. And then, so... And
I saw that in a good book. What is it called? Never Split the Difference. It's like a negotiation book. He was like a negotiator for the FBI or CIA or something like that. And he talks about that, about pausing. It's like one of the most useful tools.
And amazing to you in a sense is that, so when I was very young, I wanted to be a comic too, because I would go to because I was always a happy-go-lucky individual, and then I would go to people that get married, and I would do my little spiel.
Yeah, dude, that's so funny because that was the closest thing I ever did to stand-up. My first time.
Me too.
Was a wedding. It was my sister's wedding, and I wrote like a bunch of funny stories from when my sister was a kid and told those at the wedding, and I was like, that getting laughs. I was like, that was fun.
Yeah, and I had a little violin that I was using, and all of that kind of stuff. So it was quite an experience. But then, for a period until I really went through Toastmasters, if I still look back and saying that really changed my life, in a way, is to have that, and that's why it is so important to become a good communicator, for one. And then to have that confidence, I'm as good as the others, especially when you had a challenging, I was not very good in school, never quite knew why, and it took me till I was 57, by pure coincidence, I picked up a book and I looked open and I say, oh my God, that's me, ADHD,
No, I think the speaking, I think that with comedy all the time, like I always tell everyone, I'm like, I think everyone should do stand-up comedy. Because just the amount of confidence that comes with it, like it just started like bleeding over into every area of my life, And I always say, like, after you've been booed off stage by 200 people, you don't really care when one person doesn't like you.
It doesn't matter.
You're like, it's fine. You're going to be fine, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's been a phenomenal ride.
Tell us once more where you're speaking on Saturday.
This weekend. So Saturday, it's the PG Playhouse. It's the 7 o'clock show is sold out, which I want to say when I have the chance here, like, thank you to Prince George, man. Like this community, dude, it's phenomenal. Like they have, I always say they're the heartbeat on this dream of mine. And I'll tell you, John, I never felt more like a comic than I was in Australia when I was putting this together. And it was like, 3 p.m, their time, and I'm like, I just have to get these tickets on sale. I have to announce this show.
Right.
And normally you want to do like a Monday or a Friday at 5 p.m. and like have a proper release.
Yeah.
I was like, I just got to get these on sale, get this done. I'm in the cafe and I like post it for sale, post on my Instagram like, hey, these are on sale. I'm coming home to do a special taping. Yeah. It was less than 3 minutes. I had already started selling tickets. Yeah. And it was 3 a.m. in the morning over here. Yeah. And people started buying tickets already. And then it was like with little to no marketing. I spent maybe $15 on marketing. And we had the first show sold out 2 weeks after the announcement, which was 2 months in advance. I've never had a show sell out like that. Right. So we sold all 300 tickets to the first show 2 months in advance. So much so that we're like, okay, let's add a second show. Yeah. And that's what we've done now. So there's a second showing at 9:30. But it's like, dude,
till about 11, right?
Till about 11, yeah. So it's about an hour and a half long show. But just like the amount of support this community's got behind me, man. Like it just...
Always has had.
And that's something that's changed over my years. Like you always look at why are you doing what you do? Yeah. And now I really want to show the community that like you can be... Like doesn't matter where you come from, you can be whatever you want, Exactly. Like because like I didn't know anyone from up here in the north that went into this pursuit. Like when I started comedy, I didn't have anyone up here to really talk to show me. There were people up here who did it locally, and they showed me the ropes locally, which was great, and that's what got me started. And like, I'm always grateful to them for that. But then it was like, getting to be able to come from here and then move into a big city and get in an industry you've never been in. It's because I always just thought it was like, if you're not cutting down trees in Prince George, you're not making money, you know? Yeah. And exactly. Then, so now I've got this new like task I've taken on where I'm like, I want to show my niece and nephew and everyone that, you can do whatever you want to do, man.
Exactly. And everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And again, it comes to finding your passion. Yeah. Living the dream, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you are, and I am.
Yeah.
Alex.
Johnny, my man.
A pleasure.
Always a pleasure, dude.
And success. And we'll do it again next year.
I would love to, dude. Yeah. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Yeah, anytime.